The dinner date was a whirlwind of laughter, conversation, and getting to know each other on a deeper level. I was starting to fall for my boss, and I didn't know how to stop it. I couldn't believe what I just walked in on. My boss, Mr. Xavier, was having sex with the receptionist on his desk. I quickly apologized and rushed out of the room, feeling a strange pang in my chest. Why did it bother me to see him with another woman? I mean, it shouldn't be any of my business, but I just couldn't shake it off the feeling. As I made my way back to my desk, I couldn't help but think the date we had gone on a few days ago. He had been charming and attentive, and I had almost fallen for his charms. But now, I was reminded of his true nature. He was a womanizer, and I was just another conquest for him. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept wandering back to the scene I had just witnessed. I felt embarrassed and humiliated, like I had been played for a fool. I couldn't believe I had almost fallen for his tricks. Just then, my phone rang. It was Mr. Xavier. "Jane, can you come to my office?" he asked, his voice smooth and calm. I hesitated for a moment, wondering if I should go, but something inside me told me to confront him. "Yes, sir," I replied, my voice firm. As I walked into his office, I could feel the tension in the air. He was sitting behind his desk, looking calm and collected, but I could see the guilt written all over his face. "Jane, I think we need to talk," he said, his voice low and husky. I nodded, my heart racing. "Yes, sir, I think we do." And with that, I began to confront him about his behavior and about the way he had treated me and the other women in the office. I was determined to stand up for myself and show him that I wouldn't be played for a fool. "Jane, I think you're misunderstanding the situation," Mr. Xavier said, his voice dripping with condescension. "I'm not misunderstanding anything, sir," I replied, my voice firm. "I know exactly what I saw, and I know how you've been treating the woman in this office." He chuckled, a cold, meatless sound. "You're just jealous, Jane. You're jealous because you're not the one I'm interested in." I felt a surge of anger, but I kept my cool. "I'm not jealous, sir. I'm just tired of your games and the way you're treating us like objects, not people." He leaned forward, his eyes glittering with anger. "You're just an employee, Jane. You will do as you're told, and if you don't like it, you can leave." Wow. I stood my ground, my heart pounding. "I'm not going anywhere, sir, and I'm not going to let you bully me or anyone else in this office." He sneered at me, but I could see the fear behind his eyes. He knew I had him cornered. Just then, the door opened and the receptionist walked in, a smug look on her face. "Sorry to interrupt, sir, but you have a meeting with the investors in 10 minutes. Mr. Xavier's face changed, his expression smooth and calm once again. "Thank you, Emily. Jane, will continue this conversation later." I nodded, my heart still racing. I knew I had won this round, but I also knew the war was far from over. As I left his office, I felt a sense of determination. I was going to take him down no matter what it took. I thought I had made my points clear, but Mr. Xavier didn't seem to get the message. Instead of backing off, he continued to pursue me with even greater determination. The next day, I found myself face to face with him again, this time in the office break room. He was charming and charismatic, his eyes locked on mine as he tried to convince me to give him another chance. "Jane, I know I've made mistakes, but I promise to make it up to you," he said, his voice low and husky. "Let me take you out for dinner, just the two of us. I'll show you a good time, I promise." I shook my head, trying to stay firm. "No, Mr. Xavier, I mean it, I'm not interested." But he just smiled, his eyes gleaming with determination. "I'll wear you down, Jane. You'll see, I always get what I want." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving me feeling uneasy and unsure of what to expect next. As the days went by, his persistence only grew. He would show up at my desk with small gifts and tokens, trying to win me over with his charm. He would invite me to meetings and lunches, always finding ways to be near me. I tried to stay strong, but it was wearing me down. I couldn't deny the attraction I felt. I was starting to wonder if maybe, just maybe, I was wrong about him all along. I couldn't deny the flutter in my chest when he was around. But I was determined to ignore it. I had made up my mind to keep our relationship strictly professional. Little did I know that Mr. Xavier was just beginning to make his move. He started leaving small gifts on my desk, sending me thoughtful messages and finding excuses to touch my hands or shoulder. I tried to brush it off as mere friendliness, but deep down, I knew better. He was chasing me slowly and surely, and I was running out of excuse to resist. Mr. Xavier's tactics were subtle yet effective. He would often accidentally bump into me in the break room or hallway, apologizing profusely while his eyes locked onto mine. He would ask me about my weekend, my hobbies, and my dreams. Questions that seemed innocent enough but made me feel like he was trying to uncover the real me. I tried to maintain my distance, but he was always one step ahead. He would find ways to make me laugh, to make me feel at ease, and to make me want to be around him. And yet, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I was being pursued and that he was slowly closing in on me. One day, as we were working late on a project, he offered to drive me home. I hesitated, but he insisted, and I found myself agreeing. As we drove through the city, he turned on some soft music and started talking about his own dreams and his own fears. I felt a connection forming, a bond that went beyond mere colleagues, and then he dropped me off at my doorstep, his eyes lingering on mine for a moment too long. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I realized that I was in trouble. I was starting to fall for my boss, and I didn't know how to stop it. As the days went by, the lines between professionalism and personal connection began to blur. Mr. Xavier would often call me into his office to discuss work, but our conversation would veer off into personal topics. He would ask about my family, my friends, and my interests, and I would find myself opening up to him, sharing things I never thought I would share with my boss. He would listen intently, his eyes locked onto mine, and I could sense a deep understanding between us. It was as if he knew me better than I knew myself, and I just couldn't help but feel drawn to him, to his charisma, his confidence, and his kindness. One evening, as we were working late on a project as usual, he offered to take me out for dinner, just to celebrate a job well done, he said with a smile. I insisted, knowing that it was a bad idea, but he persisted, and I found myself agreeing, my heart racing with excitement. As we sat down at the restaurant, I realized that this was a date. Yeah, a real date. And I was both thrilled and terrified. Where was this going? And what did it mean for our working relationship? The dinner date was a whirlwind of laughter, conversation, and getting to know each other on a deeper level. Mr. Xavier was charming, witty, and attentive, making me feel like I was the only person in the world. We talked about everything from our favorite books to our childhood memories, and I found myself feeling more and more comfortable around him. As the night wore on, I realized that I was having the time of my life. I had never felt such a strong connection with someone before, and it both thrilled and scared me. I mean, what did this mean for our working relationship? And what did it mean for my heart? As we finished our dessert and prepared to leave, Mr. Xavier reached across the table and took my hand. "Thank you for tonight, Jane," he said, his eyes sparkling with warmth. "I've had a wonderful time getting to know you better." I felt a jolt of electricity run through my body, and I looked into his eyes. That was it. This was the moment I had been avoiding. The moment I had been fearing, and yet I couldn't help but feel drawn to him, to his warmth, his kindness, and his charm. "Let's do this again some other time," he said, his voice low and husky. as he walked me out of the restaurant into the cool night air. I nodded, my heart racing with excitement and anticipation. I knew that I was in trouble, but I couldn't help myself. I was falling for my boss, and I didn't know how to stop it. The days that followed were a blur of confusion and excitement. I couldn't stop thinking about the dinner date, about the way Mr. Xavier made me feel, about the way he looked at me. I tried to focus on my work, but my mind kept wandering back to him. I knew I had to be careful. I couldn't let my feelings compromise my professionalism. But it was hard to ignore the way my heart skipped a beat whenever he was near, and the way my pulse raised when he touched my hand. I tried to avoid him, to keep our interactions brief and normal, but he seemed to sense my vulnerability and weakness. One day, as I was about to head out of his office, he turned to me and said, "Jane, can I talk to you for a moment?" My heart skipped a beat as I nodded, my mind racing with possibilities. "Let us take a walk," he said, his eyes sparkling with intensity. We walked out of the office into the bright sunlight and down the bustling street. Mr. Xavier didn't say a word, but I could feel his eyes on me, and I sensed his intensity. We turned a corner into a quieter alley, and he finally spoke. "Jane, I have to tell you something," he said, his voice low and husky. "I've been wanting to say this for a long time, but I couldn't find the right moment." My heart raced as I looked up at him, his eyes burning with emotion. "I'm in love with you, Jane," he said, his words hanging in the air like a challenge. "I knew it's complicated. I know it's wrong, but I can't help how I feel." I felt like I've been punched in the gut, my breath caught in my throat. I couldn't believe what I was hearing or the way I felt. "Mr. Xavier," I started, trying to sound professional, but my voice trembled. "Call me Alexander," he said, his eyes flashing with intensity. "We are beyond formalities now, Jane." I nodded, my mind racing as he took my hand, his touch sending shivers down my spine. "Let's take a chance, Jane," he said, his voice full of conviction. "Let's see where this takes us." I looked into his eyes and I knew I was in trouble. I was in trouble because I wanted to take a chance. I wanted to see where this will go. I wanted to feel alive, to feel wanted, to feel loved. But as I nodded, he pulled me close. I couldn't shake off the fear that lingered in the back of my mind. The fear that I was just another conquest, another notch on his belt. The fear that he would break my heart like he had broken so many others. Alexander was a womanizer and a charming and ruthless seducer. I had seen the way he operated, the way he toyed with women's emotions. And yet, here I was, falling for him line and sinker. I saw the same glint of arrogance, the same hint of selfish desire, and I knew in that moment that he hadn't changed. He was still the same man who had broken my heart, who had used me for his own pleasure. And so I pushed him away, my heart heavy with sorrow. "No, Alexander," I said, my voice firm. "I won't fall for it again. I won't be another notch on your belt." He looked at me, surprised and anger flashing across his face. "What are you talking about, Jane?" he asked, his voice cold. "I'm talking about your games, Alexander. I'm talking about your lies, your manipulations, your selfish desires. No, you haven't changed, Alexander. You're still the same man who broke my heart." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving him standing there, his eyes blazing with anger and desire. But I knew in that moment that I had made the right decision. I had chosen to protect myself, to save myself from the heartache that he would surely bring. But as I walked away, I couldn't shake off the feeling that I had made a powerful enemy, and I wondered what he would do next. The next few days were tense and uncomfortable. Alexander's attitude towards me shifted dramatically. Gone were the gifts, the thoughtful messages, the soft touches. In their place was a cold, calculating demeanor. He began to undermine my work, questioning my decisions in meetings, and subtly but surely, he tried to make my professional life a living hell. One afternoon, while I was engrossed in a project, a colleague named Lisa approached me. Lisa was a friendly, approachable woman who had been with the company for several years. She had seen employees come and go, and she had her fingers on the pulse of the office's gossip mill. "Jane," she said, her voice low, "can we talk for a moment?" I nodded, sensing the urgency in her tone. We stepped into a nearby conference room, and Lisa closed the door behind us. "What's going on between you and Mr. Xavier?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. I hesitated, unsure of how much to reveal. "It's complicated," I finally said. "Why do you ask?" Lisa sighed, glancing around the room as if to make sure we were alone. "Because you were not the first woman he's targeted, and if you're not careful, you won't be the last." I felt a chill run down my spine. What do you mean, Lisa?" "Mr. Xavier has a reputation," Lisa explained. "He charms women, makes them feel special, and then, when he's done with them, he discards them like yesterday's news. Hasn't it happened too many times? And now, it seems you're his next target." I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. What should I do, Lisa?" "Be smart," Lisa advised. "Document everything, every interaction, every conversation. Keep a record of it all, and don't let him get to you. If you need help, there are people in the office who have your back." I nodded, feeling a newfound sense of resolve. I was not going to let Alexander run my career or my life. I would protect myself, and I would make sure he faced the consequences of his actions. Over the next few weeks, I followed Lisa's advice. I kept meticulous record of every interaction I had with Alexander. I documented every undermining comment, every sly attempt to sabotage my work, and slowly but surely, I began to build a case against him. One evening, as I was working late, Alexander approached my desk. His expression was unreadable, but there was a dangerous glint in his eyes. "Jane," he said, his voice deceptively calm, "we need to talk." I looked up at him, my heart pounding in my chest. "About what?" "About this," he said, holding up a folder. "I've been reviewing your work, and there are some serious issues we need to address." I felt a surge of anger. Because I have a folder of my own, I reached into my desk drawer and pulled out my documentation. This is a record of every interaction we've had over the past few weeks. Every comment, every attempt to undermine me, I've documented it all. Alexander's eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of fear. But then he composed himself, a cold smile spreading across his face. "Do you really think anyone will believe you?" he asked, his voice dripping with condescension. "You're just an employee, Jane, and I'm the boss." "Maybe," I said, my voice steady, "but I'm not alone. There are others in the office who know what you have been doing, and if you think you can get away with this, you're wrong." For a moment, Alexander said nothing. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, my heart racing. The next morning, I arrived at work to find a letter on my desk. It was from Alexander summoning me to a meeting with the HR. My heart sunk as I read the letter, but I knew I had to be strong. I gathered my documentation and headed to the HR's office, determined to fight for my rights. As I entered the room, I was greeted by my HR manager, Mr. Wilson, and Alexander, who sat across. "We've received some serious complaints about your conduct. Mr. Xavier here has raised concerns about your performance and behavior in the workplace." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I understand," I said, "but I have some concerns of my own, and I have documentation to support them." Mr. Wilson looked surprised. "Go on." I handed him my folder and began to explain, detailing every instance of Alexander's inappropriate behavior and attempt to sabotage my work. As I spoke, I could see Alexander's expression shift from smug confidence to anger and fear. When I finished, Mr. Wilson sat back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. "This is very serious," he said. "We'll need to investigate these claims thoroughly." For the next few weeks, the office was abuzz with rumors and tensions. An internal investigation was launched, and Alexander's behavior was scrutinized closely. I continued to do my work, keeping my head down and focusing on my task, but I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me. One afternoon, Lisa approached me again. "How are you holding up?" she asked, her voice gentle. "I'm doing my best," I replied, managing a small smile. Thank you for your support, Lisa. It means a lot. She nodded, her eyes filled with empathy. You're brave, Jane, don't forget that. And remember, you're not alone. As the investigation progressed, more women came forward with their own stories of Alexander's behavior. It became clear that he had been manipulating and mistreating his female employees for years, and the evidence against him was overwhelming. In the end, Alexander was forced to resign from his position, and the company implemented new policies to prevent such behavior from happening again. As for me, I was relieved that justice had been served, but the experience had taken its toll. I realized that I had allowed myself to be drawn into Alexander's web of deceit and manipulation, and it had nearly cost me everything. But I had stood up for myself, and I had fought back against his abuse of power. We must always stand up for ourselves and others in the face of injustice. We must not let fear or intimidation silence us, and we must hold those in positions of power accountable for their actions. And most importantly, we must never allow ourselves to be manipulated or mistreated, no matter the cost. Thank you for watching. Good